attendance, and so
So moved.
Second.
Sent to us on Monday, expressing support for the one-way streets. And then also, hopefully you guys got a chance to look at the link Chris sent earlier. But those were the only two public comments.
right. Acknowledging receipt of both public comments. This is again a letter of support for the proposed one-way, as well as the email from Chris from before. Are there any comments from the committee regarding either item? I guess.
On the letter, we should talk about that under the item.
Okay, yeah. We'll talk about that under the one-way proposal under old business.
Okay.
I guess regarding Chris's email, are there any comments from the committee?
I have none. Thank you.
None? Yep. Alrighty. In which case, we will move forward then to approval of the old minutes from December 3rd. And can I get a motion? I guess hopefully the committee has an opportunity to review those minutes. Could I get a motion to either approve or comment for those minutes?
I'll have to abstain. I didn't get a chance to see those minutes.
So we don't have enough to approve. Let's
I know, but-
see if anybody shows up, or we have to
I
wait
couldn't
till the
approve
next
them. I
meeting.
didn't see them.
All right.
I move that we approve the minutes of the meeting. I did read them.
Yeah.
Can you second it, Derek?
As well as Karen's comment.
Yeah, that we won't have 3 votes to approve, so
So we can't. Yeah.
see if,
Okay.
well, we can come back to it if another member makes it.
We'll hold on that item then. I guess moving then to the old business, which is a continuation of the discussion around the one-way streets on Mariposa and Monterey, for which we had a public meeting last time, which was quite, I think, a success. Regarding that, I guess would staff like to give an update first?
So just to encapsulate, we heard from members of the
And sorry,
public.
Karen, is your microphone on? I guess. Can you guys
I
hear
can
okay?
barely hear you.
Yeah, we kind of hear muffled a little bit.
We're
but
close enough. Is that better?
I'm not sure if it's just not through speaker. I mean, I can hear you okay. I'm just not sure if it's the recording. It sounds like mine's a little louder. That's why.
Get him to turn up my microphone. How about when I talk really loud, which is not.
Yeah, as long as it's okay on
normal.
the feed, I just want to make sure that it was.
While he does this, why don't we go back to the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
In which case, coming back to the item of the approval of the minutes from December 3rd, we had a motion on the table from Linda to approve the minutes, for which I'll second. If we can get a vote for people, for everyone in favor of approving the minutes from December, or any comment to those minutes.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
In which case, the minutes are approved. Thank you. And we're on the order of old business, for which case, Karen? Making sure. Yeah.
How about now? How about now? Am I louder now?
A little bit, yeah. I think that might be better now. Sally?
They're all the same, which is the funny part.
Still not? Yeah.
It's my voice, though. Crank me up a little bit. Staff two. Staff two. How about now? Oh, yeah.
That's much better.
I can hear the echo. So, a good attendance from neighbors. We got a lot of feedback. There was a bit of concern about speeding. What are you doing? Turn me all the way down? Bit of concern about speeding. For example, if Monterey were made one way, then you don't have to worry about traffic coming in the other direction and people might drive faster. Concerns about the turn at Solano and Mariposa. On the public works side, we wanted to hear from fire that they were very much in favor, because that was one of the impetuses, if that's how you pluralize impetus, that made us bring this forward. And they are still kind of considering, relative to their whole plan, whether they feel like that would make a significant enough difference to kind of force it on the neighborhood. So we feel like we still need to see what that answer is before we decide if we're going to try to press forward. But I am curious, we wanted to discuss what your guys' thoughts were about the feedback we got.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall the public's response was great that so many people came out to the meetings. I think engagement was fantastic, but I agree that it was sort of, I'm not sure sort of what the action is after that then. So I would defer to you guys. Yeah, either.
My sense about it was that the feedback was mixed. I actually took a head count while I was sitting there, and it kind of seemed to be split pretty much down the middle with those opposed and those that approved of the changes. I, however, think that we really don't have a whole lot of choice in this matter, and it was good to get some feedback and hear what the concerns were for those that were opposed. So that's my takeaway.
Now I'm trying to remember if we got the speeding or the speed data on Mariposa yet. So I think that was a factor that we said we would collect that data.
Yeah, that was definitely a pending moment. And I think also, yeah, maybe commenting that maybe not opposition, but it seemed like people were resistant to it as well. But definitely aware that this is an issue and some resolution needs to be there to address the concerns. Christian?
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Linda. If you were to, count who were in favor and who wasn't, it seems like pretty 50-50, and there were some people that were voicing more their opinion more than others. But they also, because I live in that street, then I talked to some other guys. They also feel that they could be persuaded, because overall, right now, they do feel that they have a speeding issue, and they feel that with with this mood, that could increase. But they were also, realistic about the other issues that we want to address, and Chris mentioned about the fire, and obviously, what happened in LA is another,
After that meeting.
it's a real
right.
concern, yeah.
Hey, go ahead, Paul.
So I apologize, Christian, to the others about missing my debut to meet at the library. I was very excited to be there, and unfortunately, I missed my date. I had the wrong day on I had my original Wednesday. So I had spoken with Jessica Aloft here because she contacted me regarding what she sent as far as her proposals, and the idea about the blocking off the street and making it pedestrian only. My comment to her about that was that I thought that wouldn't be allowed because that could impede emergency vehicles, especially to get down Inyo. But something that seemed like a viable plan, because I watched the gathering that you had to discuss the issues with the streets, and the comments made about the crossing is what we had talked about in here, that if we didn't allow or tried to get people to use the one side of Solano for walking on and getting to school and getting to that part instead of the let's call it the east side of Solano, where you had to cross Mariposa, where it's very steep to try to navigate that crosswalk. Especially, I mean, obviously a wheelchair wouldn't be able to do that, but I like that idea. We talked about that, and one of your persons that attended had mentioned that the students especially wouldn't have to cross the street 2 more times by eliminating that crossing at Mariposa and Solano. So, and we had talked about that here as well. So I like that idea. And I know a lot of this, as far as the speeding issue goes, almost every street in this town, cars are flying up and down the street. So it's like it happens everywhere, of course. And I don't know how that could be eliminated with the, without putting speed bumps everywhere. But one of the things that I had mentioned to Jessica was that I thought, you know, the traffic, if we make it one way coming down Mariposa, is not going to make more traffic go down Mariposa when they're leaving the school, because they're either going down Solano to get back up into town, or they're going down Mariposa anyway to get out of that area. But in regards to Inyo Street, that is probably one of the most narrow streets in town. I made the suggestion to her that possibly to alleviate all that traffic coming down Inyo like they do, making Inyo a one-way going the opposite direction, where you'd have to come in from San Francisco Street and then only turn left onto Mariposa to go to Visitation. And she liked that idea, because, you know, everybody that goes down Mariposa, for the most part, when they're leaving, doesn't go to Visitation. One of her proposals on here was a 4-way stop sign at Visitation and Mariposa, because I know it's difficult for people that go down Mariposa to cross there. And I would think that most people would go down Monterey now, because there is a 4-way stop sign, and make it safer to get out. But anyway, I thought that was a good idea to reverse the direction on Inyo Street, and she thought that was a good idea as well, if the city wasn't open to the idea of blocking off Inyo for pedestrian traffic only. So I thought you guys did a good job, and I thought the neighbors that were there did a good job as well. I know there was a recommendation that they go further up the street, going up to Humboldt, go up to Sierra Point, and find out what the neighbors think up there. And I get the issue about what the neighbors think, because the people that are on these streets are going to be the most impacted. But it comes down to, like Karen had mentioned, this whole thing started out because the fire department are restricted as to the equipment they could send up Mariposa to get to the school, the pool, and the nursery school. So,
Hey, Paul, I just wanted to add regarding the situation on the east side of Solano. So we are going to move forward with allowing parking there, and then just having pedestrians cross the street to if they want to access other areas of the city. But we are going to add white striping and add signage, so close that area to pedestrians, and that's going to be parking.
but not taking away more parking there.
No, we're not taking it away. No, we're leaving the parking there. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I have a
Great,
question.
thank you.
Yeah.
Regarding closing off Inyo and making it pedestrian only. Where would the residents of Inyo park?
Well, that wasn't my proposal. That was.
I just wondered if you knew, if you had discussed it with her.
Oh, well, they wouldn't block the street off completely. They were just talking about, she was talking about blocking it off on Mariposa and Inyo to pedestrian only, and then they would have to come in
Okay.
from San Francisco anyway. But what I had mentioned when she was mentioning that was that in order to make that calmer, Inyo at least, calmer, to reverse the flow of traffic, to have them come in from San Francisco and then exit onto Mariposa.
Thank you. Yeah.
Interesting idea. Thank you.
And with that, we've had a couple members of the public join us. Is it appropriate to allow comment from the public at this time?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, if anyone would like to comment from the public, thank you for coming down to the meeting. So far, we've opened the meeting and have started discussion around the one-way proposal we discussed last time at the library. No action's been taken. We have received another letter of support here for one of those proposals, which is being discussed here. But if anyone would like to comment from the public, we'd invite you to comment now. Yeah.
But wait, you have to go up to the mic so that
You can- yeah,
so we're
there's-
recording.
There's a microphone at the podium if you can just step up to the. Yeah, you can. I mean, I guess you can.
It
just for the-
doesn't
I can repeat
it
the
doesn't
question.
record into the
Yeah.
YouTube.
So I was at the last meeting and I suggested, and I don't know if it happened, did mailers go out to the other residents? And this is all we got. We have 2 people from Monterey and 2 people from Solano.
Yeah.
That's it.
For this meeting,
Did the mailers go out to people who live on Sierra Point, Humboldt, Kings?
no, we haven't done more mailers yet. And what I said, I was trying to get in before we got going, was that we're still, the public works side of staff felt like fire didn't say, we absolutely need this. And we talked to them afterwards, and they still want to look at their whole evacuation plan and tell us if they are, we need this, or sure, it would help. Because we heard a lot of opposition, so we're still kind of working through, like, is this the best thing to do or
So
not?
the one ways may not happen, and you're
We're
figuring that
still
out.
all discussing it at this
Okay.
point.
Well, because there was probably 10, 12 people at the last meeting, and that was, the only people who came were residents who got mailers on Mariposa and mailers on Monterey. So those residents came. And so I suggested, well, Monterey is a throughway for the upper residents, and that they should be notified to voice their opinion, because there was a lot of good opinions and suggestions in December. And I think with just the small amount of people, if we get more people from the Ridge, or excuse me, from the people who actually use Monterey to go up and down, I'm sure they would like to voice their opinion on if it were a one-way street. And I know what it came down to was emergency vehicles, but that's going to happen on every street in Brisbane, really. So
Yeah, I think what Karen is saying, that was heard. Thank you for the comment. And yeah, that was definitely heard. And I think in response to that, this is, that's not a permanent action or happening yet. And so there will be further outreach if that does move forward, I think, in any capacity beyond today's discussion, but we should continue that. But yeah, definitely, it was heard that I think there's no immediate action in terms of changes that these drafts, there's definitely opposition to some of these, and there's many considerations here for sure. And there has been no additional mailers yet, I guess, per discussion.
I would say, I think fire, to some degree, they have plans for how to deal with a wildland fire, but we didn't get into, at the staff level, seeing their maps or anything like that. And I sort of understood that they'll set up traffic control when an event happens, but they said, if people aren't coming down Monterey, they have to divert to Mariposa. That's great for Monterey, but then we're still going to have that problem further up. So they're trying to evaluate whether they want to say this is kind of an essential thing to do, or, oh, it'd be nice if you did it. So let us know what the community thinks. Or
Yeah.
can you go back up?
Yeah. No. Yeah. And we appreciate you all coming out, especially sort of given that this is on the agenda, but yet it seems like there's not much more to say given the last discussion, and there aren't really counterpoints to the public's comments around concerns. I think that's maybe what Karen is trying to articulate, that we're sort of revising whether this is a need for the fire department. And if that's not the primary need, then sort of, if the citizens don't need this, there's not a primary need for the fire, then, why sort of push that forward? And if there isn't a demand, then perhaps that is not a primary, need moving forward. But I'd love to hear further comment from.
Yeah, so I think, just to get everybody in the same page, it might help to recap, because it's true, we do have some action items that we needed to do. And as Karen mentioned, the fire department was going to look into to see if it was, an imminent need for them to, have that right away. But there was also some speeding data, and there was also some other, mechanism to slow down the speed in different occasions. As it is right now, it's also a speeding concern. So do we make a list of the action items that the meeting generated? Can we just have a recap on that?
Go ahead.
I mean, from what I remember, those were the main two concerns, right? It was speeding and fire access. I mean, that's pretty much the outstanding concerns. Those are the two biggest issues that we kind of circled on for that hour and a half. I don't know if
Is
there's any.
there an
I don't know if
update?
there's any more. If that's what you're saying.
Yeah, is there an update on the speeding study or the perhaps the speeding survey on those streets?
I don't have it yet. Yeah.
I think we have to remember that there have been people that have come to this meeting concerned about vehicles hitting buildings and that have experienced that at the top. And that was another thing that we need to look at as we process all of this information and move forward.
Particularly that one house at the corner of.
The one on the corner, and I think across the street, the people that lived across the street from that house on the corner had some real issues with the turns being made at that corner also. So I think we need to not lose sight of that problem also when we're deciding the importance of making the change and how necessary it is. Thank you.
And the meetings that we've had up to this point, and at that last meeting at the library, it was mentioned that as we proceed, one of the plans was to consider notifying neighbors further up on the hill. But the emergency vehicle issue is not like police cars, ambulances, and the fire trucks, the engines we have in Brisbane. And Randy had mentioned it at the library that it's the trucks, the ladder trucks, the big trucks that come in that couldn't make that turn up Mariposa onto Solano to get to the schools and the pool and the, whatever it is. And most all of the other streets in Brisbane, those trucks could navigate the streets, but that one street in particular, Mariposa, going to Mariposa on the Solano, they wouldn't be able to do it. And even moving trucks and other big trucks that have tried to do that have gotten stuck there. And so that pretty much was the driving force, I believe, behind this discussion we're having now. But good things have come out of it. I mean, the issue about the crosswalk at Mariposa and Solano, and the fact that most people wouldn't have to cross 2 more times by using that crosswalk, and then that other crosswalk that's comes off of San Francisco Street to the Silver Spot, which is very dangerous. I mean, if you've ever tried to cross there, especially coming from the Silver Spot, the cars come around that corner so fast, you're already in the crosswalk, and you're like, so, the traffic calming, like they mentioned at the meeting, the stop signs aren't traffic calming, they just are a suggestion that you need to stop, right? Because a lot of people don't stop at those stop signs, but I get that that's a very dangerous spot. And I personally believe that one-way streets do have a safer a sense of safety for the neighborhood, because at least you know that the traffic for the most part is coming from one direction. And yes, the comments were made about if there was an emergency, people had to evacuate. What's going to happen when they want to come down the hill and go down Monterey? And it was also made, the comment was made that emergency vehicles could go down a one-way street the opposite direction if they had to. But my sense for that meeting that you had at the library, which was, I was glad they met in your neighborhood so you can, kind of like easy accessibility, get down to the meeting, but, you guys are the ones that deal with the everyday issues with the vehicles. The speeding was the one comment that kept resonating in most people's concerns, but, most streets in town, wasn't sure if you hear when I mentioned this earlier, that speeding all over town is a problem. So good things have come out of this. The crossing issue, the speeding issue, setting up the radar. I mean, some of your neighbors have said there's people, they saw somebody doing 60 miles an hour.
So I guess
Going
on
down.
that point, sorry to interrupt you there, but I guess the radars, or I guess the data on the speeding is still coming in. And to Christian's point, I guess regarding other action items from the last meeting, and perhaps maybe if there are other comments in addition to sort of bolster that. But I'd love to hear sort of feedback and then action items to make sure that we sort of continue the progress on this point. So perhaps one, was the speeding report, which we're waiting on. Anything else that was pending from the sort of our side there?
It's not directly related to the one-way streets, but the speed hump came up on Solano, and the discussion kind of leaned towards it's not doing its job. People are going around it. People are still speeding down Solano on the way towards the school or away. So one thing we did do as the city, we actually going to get a contractor to add bollards on an existing parking stripe that is perpendicular to the speed hump, which essentially will make it so that a car cannot just go around the speed hump, or they would run straight into bollards. So I just want to say that's one thing that we took forward with Public Works, that we're going to try to address that issue by having people, actually have to use the speed hump. And like I said, the no parking, or the allowing parking on Solano, but that's what we have right now for what we've done.
I guess the bollards are happening, or is that a proposal?
That's happening, yeah.
So I guess that's the outstanding, and then do you have a comment you wanted to make, or?
Yeah, I was just thinking if other folks that are here thought about something else and want to add in, now also provided the outcome with Solano and Mariposa, that stretch. If you have any comments on that, do you understand it? And just in general, so far what we have done is not taking any parking away, just to be clear.
I mean, are you guys, I'm curious, but at the microphone, are you guys in favor or opposed? And you've already said, so. Opposed, favor, opposed of what? Making those two streets one way.
Well, I would have wished there would have been more people here to give their comments, but which way are we, like go one way up Mariposa, one way down Monterey? Which streets are we talking about being one way and which way direction?
Yeah, so the proposal is up Monterey and down Mariposa. Because
Map is
the
coming
turn
up here.
going up Mariposa, turning right onto Solano is difficult with a yield. People are, we got a little, you can go through it again, Tomas, really quickly.
I just think Monterey is a super busy street for everyone to get up the hill. I don't know. I think maybe it should be two ways, or maybe some speed bumps, because people do speed on it as well. But you said they speed everywhere.
So I guess this is right there, that slide is sort of the framework that was discussed last time, the proposal in terms of going up Monterey and then sort of having Solano be both ways, but with parking being restricted on one side potentially and then down Mariposa. But it seemed like the sort of the community's response was, if there's not really a problem there and if fire is not the main issue, then perhaps this is not really a priority in terms of, obviously speeding is an issue and there's ways to reduce that, but perhaps the one-way resolution is not the way to move forward. And I think that was perhaps the message, but we'd love to hear, obviously.
So what we're talking about now is we're waiting for the fire department?
I think that was sort of to see if they still thought this was a priority in terms of a path.
Yeah, from the staff's position, if the committee feels, we got a lot of different feedback, right? So I don't know if the committee is comfortable or ready or would want to make a recommendation, but we would recommend to council if the committee was of a mind. But I feel at the staff level, we feel like if fire isn't saying, oh, this would make things much better, and we don't see that, and we see the community not liking it, so we're not going to say we absolutely need this.
In other words, it seems like people don't like this change.
Some people were in support of it, and some
Okay.
people weren't.
Okay.
Yeah.
We did receive some notes and letters of support as well for some of these changes. For mostly the letters. I believe, right? I think we received one today, one last time in favor. Of.
Yeah, the letters were in support. But yeah.
So, some of the public that we have that were not at the meeting. One of so this been on the table for quite some time, and was dropped and then came back. Actually, at the beginning, I myself lived in Mariposa and I didn't support it. But obviously the fire issue has a lot of weight, especially with what we're seeing going on with fires and stuff. But the verdict's still out. They're going to come back and say whatever they're going to say. But what also triggered this meeting was there are residents on that slope that there's always some sort of situation over there, and they say what can we do to alleviate that? Because if you stop and then you want to continue, you're gonna it's just not a smooth transition to go up to Solano from Mariposa or coming down, especially with the kids. So we need to keep that in mind too, and I think Linda brought that up. So it's not just the fire trucks, it's that those other residents mentioned that, and I myself feel that we got to do something. So that's where we're at right now.
But that's the thing, it's Mariposa that has a problem, so why are we changing Monterey in direction? If it's just the fire department, it's also gonna be on a lot of other streets, it's not just Monterey. But if Mariposa definitely has to go one way, that's, why change the direction of Monterey?
I mean, that's a great question, but I'm not a traffic engineer, and we have staff here that has tons of experience. And unfortunately, Randy's not here, and he was the one that sort of put this presentation together. And my understanding is that you need to get Monterey involved, because you're going to, in order for that to work, you're going to have to distribute the traffic in a way that, because if you just make Mariposa one way going down, and then you might clog Monterey, because then you're going to have a two-way. And also, he did mention some other technical concerns, but that's a good question. We just feel, I think the consensus was technically you needed to distribute that traffic, and that was the way that they suggested it.
I think these are still proposals, maybe. And I guess, is there a timeline for when the fire department might get back in terms of, or the sort of request for need for this?
Yeah, I mean, we've already been talking to them, and they've said, give us more time. So, should be soon.
I don't know if anyone else thought about it, but when the fires in Los Angeles were really out of control and growing very rapidly, I reflected on this change as, I think it was mentioned at the meeting, I'm pretty sure it was, that creating evacuation routes and creating routes for fire trucks to get up the mountain was also part of this plan. And it suddenly became very urgent to me to find a way to get fire trucks in and people out without them meeting head on, because our streets are so narrow. So I just hope everyone will keep an open mind about it. It's for the greater good. I think if we really look carefully into this decision, it might be inconvenient, but I think after a while, we get used to doing things a different way in order to protect more lives and more traffic. And I did mention that people evacuating could potentially, we could create an evacuation route that instead of crossing Monterey going left to go down Mariposa, we could have evacuation routes that went to the right and went down Mendocino during an evacuation only. It would be required that you evacuated that way, so that fire trucks aren't trying to get up while people are trying to turn left. And I think safety in general for the entire Upper Street community is something we really need to bear in mind. Thanks.
I suggested that those people be notified
I agree. I agree with you very much. And I thought that we would have another meeting with the people who are initially affected and then possibly bring in more. But your opinion about how it's going to affect you living on those streets is primarily what we wanted to hear first. And we did discuss notifying residents in the upper streets around your area and inviting them to come and put in their input to be weighed for all of this before a decision's made. We're very far from making a decision at this point. In my humble opinion, I hope we don't move through this too fast. Thanks.
Chris?
Hi. I was really surprised to see this item turn up on the agenda because it wasn't clear what we were going to be talking about tonight. And I really feel for people who've come tonight thinking there was going to be something meaningful to respond to, and we don't seem to have anything. I really appreciate your memory because I forgot many of the things about that last meeting that you have recalled. And I think that's one of the first things I want to note. I don't see the minutes to this meeting that you approve, so the public doesn't get a chance to find out if it reflects what they brought to the meeting. So that's one of the things I'd like to suggest, is that the public get to see the same minutes that you get to see. Those action items that we're not clear on should be in. I understand the challenges of doing minutes to a meeting, but action items are a minimum that should be included in those minutes so that we can be responsive. I also don't know why we're keeping this plan so close to the vest when there are a lot of people in town who really should be able to take a look at it and evaluate it and maybe even play with it. There should be a model perhaps set up at the library that shows the proposal and gives people an opportunity to suggest options or modifications to it, because we're the ones who are going to be dealing with this in the future. And any future, if this should turn up on the agenda in the future, it should be clear what the purpose of that conversation is. Just saying it's a discussion is not very meaningful and very difficult to respond to as a citizen here in town. So it should be really clear what's expected, and it would be very helpful to have Randy here anytime we have that discussion and someone from the fire department here. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
Regarding the minutes, just Chris, I think I clarified this with you earlier, but so for instance, the minutes got approved today by the committee, or they will be approved, and then we post them once they've been adopted by the council. Right, and I guess my only response to that is I'm just doing it the way the rest of the council committees do it, but. Okay. And regarding action items, I think when that meeting ended, we had a lot of different kinds of opinions, but the main takeaway was that staff needed to go kind of discuss internally, and that included fire, and that's still ongoing. So as far as actual action items, I think we didn't have too much to go on besides that staff needs to work out what the priority is.
Yeah, and to be, I mean, let me ask the committee, like, if what we got from fire at that meeting was, yeah, that could help. And we were looking for, like, the fire administration, Linda would remember, someone came to Complete Streets. It was, I had to go back and look it up, it was 2019, and talked to us about the evacuation plan and all that. But they have, they serve 3 cities and they have different staff, and this current staff is like, we weren't part of that discussion. Yeah, you helped us, understand what the plan was. So they're saying, you still encounter the traffic coming down once you get past Monterey. So we want to look at that. Maybe they're modeling it, I'm not sure. But I guess we had to put the agenda together last week, and we're still talking to them, and I'm not thinking that they're saying that this block is gonna, but I don't know, so I'm not gonna speak for them, that this block obviously it won't solve the problem. So then it's still a decision of, like, Do we want to bring it forward knowing there's some opposition? Does the commit, you know, I know the committee will want to get more input, so we can talk through that, but this was to keep it on the agenda and not just to have the discussion after December and figure out what the next steps might be, you know, and figure out how the committee feels about how much more input do we need, or when do we want to make a recommendation, or do you feel comfortable, or do you want, you know, if fire doesn't say, absolutely, you got to do this, do you guys think you don't want to make a recommendation? We were kind of hoping to have that from fire, but we didn't have it tonight. So we're still keeping it on the agenda so it doesn't seem like we just swept it under the rug for now.
Yeah, I thank you for explaining that, because it needs to be on the agenda so it doesn't go away. And we don't have all the information that we need to have a really meaningful discussion about this at this point. We can't make a decision. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Another
But it
piece
also
is
I
that
guess, on the agenda, so perhaps, yeah.
another piece is
all-
that it'll be hard to please all the people all the time.
Yeah.
There are concerns about speeding. There are a lot of traffic calming measures that we could consider. Some of the ones we brought up were, some people thought were good, some people thought weren't enough. We've adopted something in our ordinance about speed humps, and we don't put them anywhere on a slope greater than 5%. So we're not going to put speed humps on either of those streets because they're dangerous. But there are other traffic calming measures that could be considered, and we'd proposed a couple things on this draft plan, but some people didn't think it was going to be enough. So we want to get that data. The officer that collects the data actually got in an accident, not on duty. So I think that's why we haven't got the data yet, but we'll bring that forward. That'll be part of the conversation. So as you said, Linda, we want to be thoughtful. We don't want to rush through this, but we still want to keep it front of mind, talk about what the next steps would be.
So I saw both of you guys' hands raised as well. I did want to appreciate, though, that the public coming out again. Thank you guys. And it seems like there is no immediate action perhaps on that. We still need some time to come up with pieces of the puzzle here. Christian, you want to?
Yeah, so you know, I appreciate Chris' comments. Definitely, you know, I feel from the time that I've been in this committee, you know, you're a serious resident with very focused and serious observations, and I appreciate that. You know, definitely there's room to make tighter and more focused the meeting, but in general too, you know, sometimes we start with the scope of something and then it evolves, and it seems like might be one of those cases, and I agree 100%, because it seems like the fire component is taking over, and that's the evacuation too. It's not just, you know, for the fire truck to drive in there. We're looking at the evacuation component too. So definitely the people that are upstream, they need to get involved. And maybe we need to be more clear about the action items that we did say we're going to bring to, discuss or research or why not. But in general, you know, it's a serious matter, and we need to take our time, you know. So that's what we're doing here, and we appreciate you guys' time as well.
So if the fire department doesn't deem it necessary to make Mariposa or Monterey one way, then it's a non-issue?
I think that's the question at hand.
Okay.
If that is no longer deemed necessary, then is it worth sort of the extra? I think that, yeah, we're trying to resolve that piece.
And if they do deem it necessary, someone from fire should be at the meeting.
And I think at that point there'd be another sort of community outreach sort of meeting.
Okay,
I think at that point there would also be an additional community outreach meeting, as well as sort of on-site meetings, not just here.
Okay.
We talked about sort of maybe doing a weekend type site visit, you know, on-site towards the streets, but again with additional mailers for upper streets. But I think we're not quite at that point, especially if the fire department deems it
Okay.
not sort of.
Because it does affect everyone in Brisbane. They're all coming up and down Monterey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, please.
If the fire department doesn't deem this important to implement, what are we going to do with the observations that we got from that last meeting where the citizens were sharing with us their concerns about speeding
And
and the
everything
like?
else. Yeah, no, great question. And I guess just to clarify, it is the fire department, or is it? Because I know this is sort of originally passed down from sort of the department. I'm not sure if it's fire department specifically, or just to clarify that point too.
That what?
That I guess
Fire-
we're waiting for make sure the fire department decides whether or not this is an important issue. Is it the fire department of the city that we're waiting for an answer from?
Yeah, North
Okay.
County Fire Authority, technically.
Wait, yeah.
is our-
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess to Chris's question, then, could you answer that question, or could you clarify that?
What'd she ask again? Oh, yeah, definitely we want to address the speeding, but it also is on your work plan to look at speeding
Yeah,
all over
beyond
town,
that, yeah.
so.
And then if the fire decides this is not an issue, then we would sort of no longer address this, or would this still be on potentially the plan for us to look at?
I would say, let's say not a top
Priority.
priority or not an essential improvement, let's say, because
Yeah.
it's still better. But
But
I
ag-
think, as I've said, if, the committee is hearing feedback, if the committee's, if fire says, that would be nice, but we don't think it's essential, and our particular trucks can make those turns, it's the mutual aid trucks that can't, and I guess that's, I don't know, whatever reason, the committee could still say, we think this is a good idea, and we want to make the recommendation to council. You can certainly do that.
I think at that point we would definitely, there would be additional reach out sort of community engagement events, as that is sort of, I think, something that the committee is looking forward to in the coming term especially.
And we're,
I mean, so with the fire issues, not just the fire engine making the turn. Now, I think we need to have them provide us feedback in terms of their evacuation.
right.
And since we're doing this exercise, we should just, look into that, so and consider that as well. And that's one reason why we need to send mailers to the people upstream.
Paul?
So, two things. One, I was curious when I was watching the meeting at the library. I didn't hear why people didn't want the street to be one way. I wasn't real clear as to it wasn't clear as to why people didn't want it one way. I know other streets in Brisbane, like Humboldt between Ross Way and Glen Park, became a one-way street. I'm not sure why that street became a one-way street, and I'd like to know what the neighbors thought about that transition. But I'd like to know from you that live on Monterey as to why the street shouldn't be one way. And one more thing, also the comment about from Karen about that street wouldn't be considered for a speed bump because of the slope. I mean, only part of that street's a slope. The lower portion of that street on Monterey is not probably within that slope's to steepness.
The 5% grade.
5% grade. So I like the idea of some traffic calming, like speed bumps.
I wasn't at any other meeting, but my reason that I think Monterey should be two-way is because it's a main thoroughfare going up and down the mountain, and I think that would be easier for fire trucks and emergency vehicles.
I think it's clear that there obviously should be some takeaways regardless of what happens with this street. Yeah, thank you, sir. It's clear there's some takeaways. Thank you for the comment. That there are some clear takeaways regardless of sort of what happens to the street, especially sort of speeding needs to be addressed, and other sort of takeaways. And further comment, I think there's no immediate action perhaps. There are some takeaways we're still waiting from the department then I guess for additional updates. Any other comment from the committee or from the public on this matter then?
I'll add to Paul's question. What I heard at the December meeting was people expressed that there's some speeding on their streets, and if traffic is only going one way, they think it will get worse. 5%, a typical road shoulder is about a 5% grade. by design. They're not always. It's not very much. So maybe on the very bottom, but I don't know if that's really a speed hump on the very bottom. So we're really not in favor of in general because they're noisy. People brake hard and accelerate hard because they don't want to be slowed down. They don't always do what they're supposed to do, but I'm not sure it's a good application on either of those two streets. But again, there are other traffic calming measures, chicanes where you make people change direction and pay attention, pavement markings. We've put down bot stops and rumble strips, like on San Benito in the S-turn. And the Sierra Point, it's not Humboldt, it's Sierra Point that's one way, and that even predated me. I don't even know how that happened, honestly. It's for a little
Yeah,
background.
it's Sierra Point. Thank you, not Humboldt.
Sierra Point and Ross are both.
Between Ross and Glen Park on Sierra Point is one way.
That's right, yes.
Used to be two way.
And then I would say for
Oh, used to be.
the public that came, I wanted to say this in December and I forgot, is try driving it like it's a one-way street. I used the pool quite a bit and I did it a few times and it's not that, it's like, oh, I could get used to that. It's not that terrible.
It's not, I can drive one way either way. That's not the point. It's a main street. And I think the emergency vehicles is the issue. They're going to need to come up Monterey to get up the hill and down Monterey.
If I do have one more comment, if I may. I promise, last one. So, I would also agree with the fact that Monterey doesn't need to be one way to accomplish the fact that trucks can't make that right turn safely on Solano from Mariposa. So to make Mariposa one way down would eliminate the confusion for mutual aids, which was mentioned at that meeting of trucks coming in, the ladder trucks, the big ones, and not being able to go up Mariposa and make that turn. So by making it one way, it'd be obvious when they come, they see a one-way sign down at Visitation that they can't make a right turn up, Mariposa. And the need to use Monterey for those trucks in particular is necessary. So yeah, you wouldn't need to have Monterey being a one-way street because the trucks could still make it up there and make the right turn on Solano. But now it's also been mentioned that, and we're waiting to hear from the fire department, that evacuation could be the issue of that being a bottleneck at Monterey and Solano for people trying to get out of town and engines trying to get up there. But as you see with most big fires, it's chaos. And people usually abandon their cars and have to flee on foot. And that's 99% of the time, that's what's happening. So, but yeah, I mean, we're talking about this discussion and what's come out of it. The speeding issues come out of it. The crosswalks issues have come out of it. And so, and the traffic calming measures have come out of this. So,
Another
Yeah,
comment
exactly.
from December, sorry, I just jumped over you, was that if each street were one way, one neighbor said, a lot of the traffic is parents dropping kids off at school. I think the picking up happens at a little bit more staggered times, but that there'd be a concentration of traffic at certain times of the day. Whereas now people have a choice to go Mariposa, Monterey, wherever, depending on where you're going in town. But it would all be funneled, say, down Monterey. No, I have that backwards. Up Monterey and down Mariposa in the morning when the parents drop off kids at school. And they thought that would be prohibitive or a problematic, let's say.
So, I mean, one of the reasons that I would favor one way, obviously, we're waiting on the fire department to give their feedback on that. But right now, if you go, sometimes I need to go down. I need to go up Mariposa and down Monterey, and garbage day is a nightmare. You know, you have to back up and you have to do all this stuff to cross. And exactly the same thing happens in Mariposa. So if we have one way, I think that could be somewhat alleviated to a certain extent. And then also the streets that we have, we inherit the streets, they're narrow. It makes things complicated too. And then, you know, up on that little hill, that intersection, you know, we have those residents complaining, and every so often we hear squeaking and the kids and this and that. So that's another problem.
Yeah. Thank Christian. Chris?
Quick addition. This highlights actually one of the reasons I suggested that this committee take a look at the draft EIR for the query, because while we wouldn't want to consider this as a regular throughfare, there could be a potential for going through Littman in an evacuation situation if there was a road to connect through and be able to get out that way. So I suggest to take, it's a little late to comment.
Yeah. No, thank you. And yeah, thank you again for the comment. Appreciating the engaging session here today. Any further comment from either the committee or from the public on the matter, or from staff?
Let's just plan that we'll have the feedback that we told you we should be able to have next month, and that we will again agendize this item to discuss that feedback.
Yeah.
But again, it won't be the last meeting to make a decision.
I mean, there will definitely be a public outreach meeting specifically for this item, should there be additional, I think, action on this beyond the feedback then. Is that?
Yeah, that's.
I think that's a fair, yeah.
Synopsis.
Yeah, so thank you very much, yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for coming and for, coming down.
See you next month.
Yeah.
I hope.
All right, with that then, we can, I think, move on to the new business, which is review of the draft work plan, which includes this item as well as the AB 413 sort of review. And I believe this is the second item that we just were discussing on this. And again, it was referred by the Director of Public Works and now being under review by the department, the fire department. And then number one is the AB 413 implications and complete research.
Yes, this is of course not updated at all. So
Yeah,
that's kind of
so
what
now that that is sort of in effect, I'd be curious to hear both sort of how our, one, whether there's any additional work that needs to happen there from the committee, but also perhaps what, how that's going, one, enforcement, and also it's in that period, I think, of the grace period, as well as how maybe the streets are being, if they're being all painted, or what's going to be the plan there, sort of, generally.
I can't speak on enforcement, but and also generally, I only received one. I guess you would call it a complaint. It was it's Napa Avenue, which people know in Central Brisbane as the alleyway. One resident was really surprised that the parking spot was getting removed, and it kind of led into discussion of how parking is already an issue. But that's really the only one negative comment I got. We addressed, if you look around town, they've been addressed where there was striping indicating parking. It's been addressed pretty much everywhere. If there's somewhere that we missed, let me know. But yeah, I think we got to most approaches, if not all.
I guess moving forward, then there will be no like red striping or anything like that on the corners. That's sort of all done. I ask because this past Sunday, there's been quite a few cars, and for a while there were notices on the cars, sort of indicating this is not allowed. But this past weekend, there's quite a few cars that are parked, and I guess this is like complaint only. That's kind of what I was.
Yeah. So we won't be painting curbs red. So I guess that's an enforcement issue. But as far as curbs being red, no.
Yeah, when I looked at this, I thought, yeah, I'm sure they're going to want an update on how that's going, but we didn't ask before this meeting, so we'll try to bring an update at the next meeting. I would say I don't think police are going to go patrol for this daily or at a certain frequency, but they are directed when they see it to give the notices, the warnings, and when they decide to give citations, we can't tell them when to give citations, but we'll get an update for next month about how it's going. And I don't know, it's hard to change people's behavior in a small town. When we did the safe pedestrian routes. Some people park in their driveway and it blocks the sidewalk and they need to keep 3 feet clear, and probably they got a lot of tickets, and some of them probably still keep doing it, and it takes a squeaky wheel in some cases, you know, so feel free to call it in if you like, if you think it's somewhere that's should be safe, you know.
Yeah, and I've seen the restriping on some streets. I was just curious, sort of citywide and also statewide, because it is a state ordinance, so it's not just, you know, here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We did there was a statewide survey that was sent out, and you know there was not that much consistency in how cities are addressing this. So I think it's kind of I think we're all learning as we go. But for instance, it was pretty much split, I would say, fairly evenly as about who's painting red curbs, who's not painting red curbs. Are they going to enforce it, or when will they start to enforce it? It was really all over the place. It was a statewide survey, so I think we're all still kind of working that out and seeing how that takes place. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops as the law becomes. As people get more used to the law, I suppose.
Yeah, some cities were very on top of it, and some were like, we're kind of waiting to see what others do, and we're a little behind on it, we're understaffed. But then there was a further one for San Mateo County, which Tomas just gave feedback and hasn't heard what everybody else said, but we were at least able to say, we've made our changes, we're prepared to enforce.
I know we've removed spots near within the distance, but I guess we don't have red curbs normally anyways, only near fire hydrant areas then. So
Yeah,
it's not
I
like we
mean,
would paint additional.
there are a few exceptions, but it's kind of, I guess, not favored, because if it fades, then you can't enforce, and it's kind of a cost and a maintenance, and it's not required by the law to paint those red. You know, I hear concerns, how are people going to know, but we've done a lot of outreach, and it's part of getting your driver's license that you know the traffic laws. So,
And then I guess within Brisbane, I know the committee did survey sort of the streets. Were there any deemed exceptions? I don't believe so, but I know that's sort of allowed. Did we decide there were any exceptions to sort of the distancing rule, or are there any known sort of streets like that within town?
we didn't bring any to council.
Yeah.
I don't know if somebody made a case that we might take another look at one. I guess that's possible, but we didn't bring any to council with the first round. With the implementation we did, let's say.
So I'm not sure if this applies, but there's a couple issues that I have, and one that was pointed out to me, and I'll start with the one that was pointed out to me. There was a mother that was very concerned when her and her child were almost hit on Old County Road, because there were the farmers market trucks, and one time when there was vans parked for a party on Old County Road, right at the crosswalk to go across to the skate park, and they started to cross, and because there was cars here and they couldn't see the cars and the cars couldn't see people crossing there, she felt that was a very an accident waiting to happen. Of all the places in town, she thought that was the most dangerous crossing section when there's vehicles parked on Old County Road. So I wanted to just put that out there because she asked if I would. And something that I've concerned with is we did a really nice job on flashing lights at, say, crossing at South Hill and the Crocker Trail and West Hill and Crocker Trail, but there's no signs that say crossing on North Hill for the Crocker Trail. So I was wondering if we could get signs on both sides of that crosswalk on North Hill that indicate there's a crosswalk there. I mean, I know the flashing signs are a whole nother, cost, but just regular signs that say that there's a crossing there. And the other thing was that I brought up, because it's a general traffic issue and foot traffic especially, and I told you I didn't almost hit somebody, but I could see that I could have hit somebody when it was raining on North Hill, because there's no sidewalk coming down from Guadalupe down to Valley. The only crosswalk is on North Hill, but across the street, like where BB used to be, or Vitalin is. There's a crosswalk, a sidewalk there, but You know, it's very difficult when there's people walking down North Hill in the rain and they're walking in the gutter, and so they walk further out in the street, and the trees cast shadows there at a certain time of the day. If there's people walking within those shadows and you're going up North Hill, it's difficult to see somebody walking there. And unfortunately, coming down North Hill, they have to walk in the street the whole way. So,
You mentioned a number of things, so let me see if I can remember them. Caroline, watching our meeting, and who is the coordinator with the farmers market, said that truck isn't coming to the market anymore, and I said it's illegal either way, and she said she's talked to the manager to make sure cars aren't parked near that crosswalk. I don't know if you know, the timing just doesn't correlate, or police are
well, like
not-
you put those
it is
bullards
illegal.
out there, those plastic bullards at an angle, or delineators, whatever you call those things, to prohibit anybody from parking there.
Yeah, you can. The people still hit them, and they need to be replaced. But actually, there is a plan. I would think Chris would know this. Some of you that have been on the committee longer, we're going to slurry seal Old County, and we're going to put in bike lanes. So
That's
be a
good.
little more obvious if someone's parking in a bike lane than just on an unstriped shoulder
so-
edge of roadway.
So I guess I have a question now. So right now, are we reviewing the plan and making comments of additional items that we could add, or what is it that we do?
Yeah, great question. I think we got a sidetrack there.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. No, I think perhaps right now we're looking at the current plan, but given the fact that it is sort of maybe outdated is the word I use, given number one is already implemented, but there'll be updates coming. Number two is sort of also pending updates. And so perhaps we should consider how we want to move forward with this plan, whether that's a similar work plan for 2025, whether it's a top level action item, is speeding the next issue, and you know, whether that's something we want to discuss now.
Well, I mean, if we're reviewing it to add things, you know, I mean, it's great, and actually, what regarding you know, the Old County Road, you know, these are good observations, because when they're doing events in the park, that whole strip gets a lot of parking, and that creates, you know, problems and so forth. So is that something that we could probably add to the plan here, and research it more to see how can it be mitigated?
I'd like to add something.
Please.
I know that we're in the middle of item 2. Item 3, speeding and traffic calming. As Paul has mentioned a couple of times tonight, speeding all over Brisbane is a problem. And that seems to me like it's going to be a big chunk of work for us to work on and divide up into areas to look at and comment on. It's going to take a little longer. And I'm wondering if that's something we can just go through this list and decide if it's something we can take on while we're waiting for more information, or on item 2, or should we just be aware of it at this point and wait for more information on the one-way streets and which way we're going to go, because that's really our priority right now.
Oh, definitely. This is also a bulky item there, so I think there's a lot to go through, and I wonder what sort of the deliverables are on that project and how we think about that, whether that's surveying or some sort of report, and maybe there's guidance from a liaison or counselor who have you on sort of that item as the other, you know. And again, I think number 2 is what we're waiting on, but number 1, I just want to make sure that we're sort of wrapped up there and there aren't additional action items that we may want to do, whether that's outreach to the community or, you know, additional work there potentially. Although I do think that, that would be good.
It is law.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no. I
And
mean, but
there's not a
more for
whole
the
lot.
committee to outreach rather than for what we like. It's not like change anything, but more outreach or inform the community or sort of do additional work there, if
We
anything.
should
Yeah, Darius,
probably
oh, sorry.
inform the community of that in case someone missed it or forgot what AB 413 is, it might be a good idea just as a community service to send something out or put something in the water bill or something. Put it in the Star.
Yeah.
Or the blast.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Just to remind people.
Yep.
So
About item number 1?
item number 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just make sure we're probably off our work plan for now, but in case there are any additional action items the committee would need to take on this item. But yeah.
The only additional right now I can see is just continue the outreach because it is so new and it's huge. It has a big impact on people's lives.
Yeah, I think it'll be telling this once we kind of circle back with enforcement. I think that'll kind of give us a feel for what the residents are feeling. So, I mean, and if maybe they're feeling the message isn't getting across, then we can explore that outreach part. I did want to add that, Darius, we touched on it earlier before the meeting started, but we do want to have the council liaison meetings. The way the city manager wants to do it this year is just with the chair and vice chair, but we do want to have that meeting as soon as possible. So once we have that meeting, this work plan might change a lot. I don't know if you guys remember the last one from last year. We were all there, but it was a list about 10 items long, and it completely changed. So it sounds like everyone feels pretty passionate about number 3. So we can express that at that meeting, but we do need to meet with the liaisons, and maybe this list will change a bit.
And so perhaps with that, it's worth having the committee chime in additionally on other items that are important, like we have so far today. If there's any other items that you feel strongly, or the public that want to make on this list, so that we can bring that to that meeting as well.
So I brought that up. I brought that up only because, and Karen had mentioned to me that the things that I was mentioning, the time to bring those up is when we meet with the liaison. Mm-hmm. And I had asked, how often do you do that? And she said, once a year. And I was a little surprised that it only happens once a year, because it seems like it should be more often. But with that said, I get that. But I also remember you mentioning, Karen, that things that don't need to go before the council because they could be done in-house, like putting up signs for crossing, aren't something that need to go on this list. There are things that could be done without getting approval from the council. So that's the only reason why I brought that up, the issue about the crossing at Old County coming from the park across the street to the skate park, because I thought that could be an in-house thing that didn't need approval from the council, as well as putting signs up. I mean, I know that the sidewalk on North Hill is a major job, and I could see that, of course, needing approval. But was I correct that you had mentioned one time that certain things we have liberty to?
Yeah, let me clarify. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
getting feedback on the work plan from Caroline at the same moment, so I'm getting all the directions. So we have had a standing meeting with the liaisons to approve the work plan. I mean, it's been different over the years. We've worked a lot of years ago without a plan, as Linda could probably attest to. Council wanted to kind of have structure to it. So we had some meetings with the liaisons and the full committee. It's a little weird because you guys are on the dais and they're in the public. So, and sometimes we sat around a table, different ways. But now the city manager is telling us that he prefers to try just having the chair and vice chair meet with the liaisons to talk about the work plan. So that's what we're going to do this next time. We have met with the liaisons more when we had a very hot community issue. And the reason would be if we're bringing something to council. So we did a lot of work at San Bruno and Bayshore, or the committee did. And we met with the liaisons because a lot of people weren't going to like the unallowed left turn from San Bruno onto Bayshore. We thought it would big impacts to the community, big changes. And the reason that you would use a subcommittee or liaisons from the council is if they're on board, they go into the details, they're going to turn to their other council members and say, we support this, we've looked into this in depth. And that helps kind of bring the issue out to the full council. So we would probably do that. If we were recommending these one-way streets, we might have another liaison meeting, and we did have them with the parking, I think, right? But these big media issues take a lot of time to work through, so we're not having a lot of liaison meetings in a year, Let's say that. But it's possible when it's something that's gotten to a level that we're ready to make a recommendation, or we want to kind of bring some light on it with them and see what their feedback is. We are looking today on the draft work plan if you think there are other items that you think you can accomplish in the year and you think are priorities, if they might be different than what came forward last year. You guys you're in the community, you're hearing from people, you're seeing things, and that's kind of what we're looking for is, well, we've been hearing a lot about this issue, or, how do we do outreach to other neighborhoods because on Thomas Avenue, the parking permit, whatever the thing might be, we're open to that. We'd add it to that list, and at this point, it would be the chair and vice chair talking those through with the liaisons. Your second part was?
The second part was, I thought you had mentioned.
Yes, okay. So there's an operating budget for streets that Public Works staff manages, and for an uncontroversial thing that has space in the budget, we can do that. For the rapid reflective flashing beacons at West Hill, that actually came from a couple of council members, not officially through council, and we used Measure M funds, which are $10 from everyone's vehicle registration fee. City of Brisbane gets a share of that, and we can spend it on projects that reduce automobile pollution into the storm drain system. And they also consider complete streets things to be in that category, but it's not a big pot of money. It's $75,000 a year. We're using it to maintain pavement. We're using it to install trash capture devices in our storm drain in past years. We're trying to get a small sweeper, so if we did have separated or protected buffered bike lanes, let me say, then we could sweep those and we'd be able to put in more of them. We're trying to get an electric one and not a diesel powered one. So we're looking at spending the money on that. We're not bringing all of that to the committee to help spend that, but we have some little funding sources. We have a street operating budget to replace signs, to add some signs. Further on the Crocker Trail, when the master plan was done, that consultant looked at all the crossings of Crocker Trail and they made certain recommendations. They actually, at South Hill, because that turns so sharp and the visibility is so short, they recommend a hawk. I don't know if you guys would know the acronym, but it's a light standard that goes over, it goes above the street, and it has red lights. When a pedestrian pushes the button, it'll give the person a red light at a mid-block crossing. So that's what that plan would recommend in the future. And at North Hill, they wanted to change the crosswalk, but they thought there was enough visibility that they did not recommend necessarily a flashing beacon type of situation. So in conclusion, putting in some ped crossing signs is something we could do in an operating account, and we wouldn't have to go to council.
Thank you.
Christian?
Yeah. So I guess it would be a good idea to add other observations or topics here, since the vice and the chair are going to meet with the city council liaisons, and for these general topics like speeding, should we have maybe some bullet points underneath because it's just too general?
I have a very basic list just from people who have come in for one-off meetings, people who don't really see that regularly, and they've mentioned these streets. It's a really short list, but if you want to get more specific, I've heard people come in and say San Bruno, San Benito, Mission Blue, Monterey Street, and Bayshore Boulevard. So I can add that, so it's not just speed in general.
Yeah, that would definitely
Limits, or
make
in
a-
each case it was all of the length of them? I'm curious.
I'm sure there was limits, but they would come in and as residents of their street, they would kind of just be like, this speeding's a huge issue on my street. So, but we can kind of maybe narrow that down if we push forward.
Yeah, that would definitely help and put some teeth on the bone, so to speak. So also for these developments, you know, we had the Sierra Point and now the Baylands, and now we're going to have the Quarry. You know, and now you were mentioning about the bike lane on Old County.
Yeah, were you on the committee at the time? We brought forward a plan. Justin Ewan was the other
think
staff
so.
member
You know, I
to
don't
restripe.
recall.
No, it's been a few years.
Yeah,
Um,
we can bring that back.
a bunch of years actually, I think, since we worked that all out. There were some different people on the committee then, a whole
Right.
different bunch of people.
So we can share it just for information, and maybe we'll get different feedback. We're hoping to stripe this, slur seal and restripe this summer, so we should bring it maybe at the next meeting or something.
So is
That'd be nice.
so I guess what I'm trying to point out, you know, give Darius and the vice chair some more structure and more topics, and then when they meet with the council, they could, you know, decide to trim it or modify it. So I would suggest to add the you know, so for the park, whenever there is a event, there's a lot of cars that park on the street, and that creates a situation. Maybe we could look into it to see if there's a way to minimize that. The other thing that that comes to my mind is when we do the you know, end of the year festivities with Christmas, you know, what is the plan? And I don't know if that's part of our scope, but to block the street and then, you know, avoid any you know, what happened in New Orleans, that people could just like drive into those, because, you know, you have the parade and there's a lot of people on the street. So I don't know, you know, how can we make sure that no vehicle has access when those events are taking place? Like I said, I don't know if that's our scope. That would be my two observations. And then with these big developments like the Baylands, Sierra Point, and now the Quarry, how are we gonna? What would be a good approach for us to learn their impact in terms of, you know, safety from those projects to us? So that'll be my my feedback for the plan.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. So I think it's overflow parking from events mainly in the park, as well as sort of safety around large events. And that might be more of a, I'm not sure that's more of a police matter or sort of something we think about, but
Yeah, I think that I'm not directly involved, but when anyone wants to have no parking or close a street, the public works director is reviewing their plan and approving and any signs that are put out and how the traffic control is done at the staff level. I haven't been at a festival of lights, but I don't live in Brisbane. I haven't made it to one, but maybe a long time ago. But so I don't know that much about it, but I know it's done at the staff level. He's reviewing all of the traffic encroachment permits, and, you know, if it's construction on Bayshore, our inspector is making sure that, or wherever, he's making sure that that is done per the plan. So I'm not sure if that one rises to the level. I was gonna say something about not about the events. Oh,
I mean,
let's talk about that first, then
you know,
I'll.
I live in Brisbane, and sometimes, you know, when that's happening, I have driven, you know, because I need to get home. And what I could tell you is that there's a lot of wiggle room. Some crazy person wants to just freaking get in there and just go crazy. So it's just an observation, you know. I don't know if they could tie it up, or they need to put something to make sure when that all the people are working on the street is, you know, has good barriers that you want to avoid that.
Okay, we can bring that up.
Yeah.
Let's see what we get on the.
I think your point also about the Baylands developments and others and participation, sort of how the committee can help with those, is also noted, and maybe we think about that actively. Yeah, I know you brought that up in the past as well, so something to think
Yeah, I mean,
about.
I'm as interested as you guys are for this liaison meeting, because we have one new liaison, Frank Kern, and then new city manager. So it'll be interesting to see what maybe they want to add to the list. So and also how they feel about the suggestions we're doing right now. So
So
Let
it's a
me
dynamic list that will sort of work.
that was my other comment. Speak a little bit more about development reviews. So by law, with a draft EIR, an agency is required to give 45 days for review. With the quarry, they gave 60 days. It came out, I think, shortly after one of our meetings. At 20 years ago, 18 years ago, OSEC asked to have a role in reviewing the Baylands draft EIR. Linda was on a citizen committee, so she's familiar too. And the council made a determination through a recommendation from the city attorney to have that committee have a role in making comments as a body, to allow them to do that as a body, because it's not in the charter. There was not a complete streets committee at the time. So the quarry came out, and the timing was such that there would have been a couple of weeks for you to review and one regular meeting to make comments as a body, and there was no precedent. With the Baylands, it's planned, there is a precedent, we've got it in our work plan to review. All that the public works staff is hearing is that the two reviews, so there's gonna be a draft EIR for the Baylands for its specific plan. They did not want them to come out and the review periods to be continuous. So we're thinking it's gonna be coming out soon to, who knows? Maybe in the next month, maybe in 2-3 months. We're not really privy to the details, and I guess a lot of things have kind of made it be less urgent. Maybe it's the economy. That's my speculation. So on the OSEC side, with the Baylands draft EIR to change the general plan, I wasn't a staff member, but I know that they reviewed the whole thing in meetings. They had a whole bunch of meetings, and they wanted staff to take their specific comments down, and it was, people left the committee. It was, after that, it was tiring and difficult for everyone. So this time, they talked about it a bit in advance. They read the specific plan. They chose chapters to review. So each one, for the quarry, OSEC, read and reviewed certain chapters, and we changed our meeting schedule so that they could turn in their comments, and then I'll review them together and submit them as a body. Some of them didn't even finish their comments as a body on time, but we would like to do that with the Baylands, so maybe we should be talking about what the part is to review, how we'll divide it up, because it's possible that that will only have 45 or 60 days or 90 days of a review period. So we're gonna have to be really organized about how you guys review it.
Thank you for that. Maybe it'll be good to know sort of when that's coming up. But Christian.
So, I mean, speaking for myself, being in this committee for at least 5 years, and I have learned a lot, and I knew it was going to take a while just to get my feet wet. Obviously, this is not something that I do. But for these big projects, I think we need to think about how we're going to learn about them. And one thing is, I'm probably guessing, they do have a public relation director person, and just give us, from their project, what is going to impact the street safety committee, and so we could digest it better and understand it, and then make see how is that going to impact us. Because if you give me those 300 pages, it's just going to be hard for me to get into it, and I'm not going to be able to provide a substantial feedback if I'm able to have somebody sort of walk me through and see what tease out what the street component and it's going to be impacted in the city or what they're bringing in.
So we can see about that. I remember now that you brought that up before, but we definitely, this body can't prejudge an application that is not submitted. So there is no, I guess the draft specific plan is out and available to read, right? But there is no EIR yet. We're reluctant to have someone come and talk about it. And I think that if we do that, that you guys should still do your own due diligence, because they may highlight certain things that they want to highlight and downplay other things that they don't want to highlight. You know, they have an interest, and that
Did
is getting
say
you to
it's
approve their plan.
The DEIR is not out yet?
The DEIR is not out yet.
The EIR, okay. When it does come out, will it be searchable?
I don't know the answer.
The,
That was,
The PDF.
Yeah, I know when we did the initial study, the sitcom for the city, we were given a searchable DEIR for the Baylands.
when the general plan was revised back,
It was even before the general plan was revised.
but that was the EIR to revise the general plan. That was what that was, that DEIR that you reviewed as a citizen committee?
It was, the Citizens Committee had the draft EIR
Right,
for
that's
the
what,
Baylands,
so.
and it was 1,600 pages.
But we got hard copies.
We got hard copies, but they were difficult to search.
Yeah.
And then there was a searchable little computer thing, drive that we could put in. And that made things a lot easier, because what happens a lot with the draft EIRs, things are hidden. Like there could be something that pertains to complete streets that might be in 10 different places in those 1,600 pages. And making it searchable made it really easy to find all the connections and all the places where there was things that were not lining up. So I'm hoping that there might be something like that, so we can do our own due diligence, just to follow up.
Yeah, I'll have to ask. I think if it's Adobe has a search function.
Okay, and I have
right?
one question. Do we know who our liaisons are this year? I
Yeah,
know
it's still
changed.
Colleen Mackin, and now it's Frank Kern.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So I would suggest this item you'd still want to stay on your draft work plan, and that we will, next meeting, or after this meeting at some point, Tomas send out the specific plan back. I mean, it's there on the city website, but he can send it to you guys, and then you do some poking around, and then we'll agendize kind of just a plan of attack
Okay.
for the next meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good, I think. Any other comments from the committee at this point for that item? Great. In which case, then we'll go ahead and move on to staff updates.
Let me go back though.
Oh.
Does Paul brought up the North Hill sidewalk?
Yeah.
And that's come up off and on, and I've said if a good grant opportunity comes up, we would want to go for that, because it's not going to be cheap to install a sidewalk on that length. You know, I don't know if that's an item that you guys would want, look at areas where they're, you know, make a list of areas that
I
aren't
thought
sidewalk, or
that-
do investigation.
I thought that the industrial park had an obligation to provide, like a sidewalk there. Like,
Now,
well,
before.
even then, I mean, it just terminates right there at Guadalupe from the bus stops on Bayshore. A lot of people use North Hill to get down into the industrial park. And if you've ever seen them, when you get up and you start to make the turn, when you get to the top of the hill, that's where people are walking wide out into the street. And so it is I'm just surprised that industrial park got away with not having a sidewalk there.
When the development was reviewed, I mean, all of that was built in the 90s, right? So I don't know when the review happened. I've worked here since 1994. It was before that. I think it was all, well, actually, I don't know. Maybe it was still in the review, but early in the 90s. I guess it just wasn't as much of a priority, and they were allowed to put sidewalk on one side and not both.
But there's not one there at all, is my point.
Yeah. Well,
Coming down all the way down North Hill.
there's no, we can't make a developer do it now.
Huh?
We can't make a developer do it now.
Oh, well, I just threw that out there. I thought there was an obligation for the industrial park to have a sidewalk there. Like, I thought there was a special funding mechanism from the industrial park that pays for projects like that.
No.
No. Okay.
Oh, are you taking, is the chair taking public comment?
Oh, what's that? Oh, yeah. Public comment at this I mean, if public wants to make a comment, since public is here.
I would really like to investigate that because there are ways of taking an existing development and updating it as necessary. But the other two things that I was going to suggest in terms of the work plan, it's not clear to me which committee here in Brisbane, it's in the bylaws for this committee to support public transit. And I'm noticing year after year, we're not really addressing improving access to public transit here in town. I'll give you a couple of examples. The two bus stops at Valley and Bayshore are totally pitch black at night. There's no lights. I don't know how the bus drivers see people who are waiting to get on the bus there, as an example. Even the one at Old County Road is pretty dark. So find some way to be able to address public transit. And I'm not seeing bike infrastructure explicit in this plan. I recently learned of something that I wish we could dig into the history of. Apparently, when Tunnel Road was being built by Southern Pacific, there was a commitment to put a bike lane in there. In fact, they did put a bike lane on the east side of that road, as Anya Miller has recently informed me, but it wasn't maintained. And it's my understanding, maybe you remember this, that there is supposed to be a separated bike lane on Tunnel Avenue to the east. And it would be a really interesting thing to see if we can get the property owner to continue that with that commitment. Wouldn't cost the city anything, and it would be a great enhancement to the city.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah.
I think I do remember. Yeah, I remember the bike lane. Yeah.
Some dust of it. Perhaps you can look into that as well.
We have, it's been brought up.
Yeah.
And I think the response at the time to Anya Miller was that it wasn't a hill to die on because that development was imminent. And with that development, they're going to improve tunnel with pedestrian and bike access. So there are remnants of
And isn't
a path, a paved
Tunnel
path.
Road a it's private property, the road itself, and we just are given an easement to get through there, right?
Yeah,
As it sits now.
but that, that as Southern Pacific, whoever did, I don't remember long ago, there is some remnants of a path on that east side, and she's aware of that, but, there's not a cost, but there's, when a development comes forward, there's a negotiation of a development agreement, so we're not, just in general, we're not gonna get everything we want. So if we get something, maybe something else is going to suffer. So there's always a cost, even if it's not we have to write a check to do it. Presently, no, and I think that's the reason why. But I'll look back over the notes and I can report back on that.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess with that, we can
Told you it'd be a long one.
move back to the agenda and to staff updates. if there are any.
For the shuttle stop improvements project, I think my last update was that I've put it in Randy's court to review everything, and he gave it his blessing today, which was a great relief for me. So it's going to be advertised by the end of this week. So we'll finally get that project built. Just a refresher, it addresses 10 shuttle stops in the industrial park loop. So there'll be 6 new shelters installed, 4 new bus pads, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but the stops that aren't getting a shelter are getting benches or trash cans. So the whole idea is just to make it more appealing to riders to opt to use public transportation.
That's
Wonderful,
great. I hope
congrats, yeah.
somebody lets Patrick Tainter know because he worked
Right,
so
yeah.
hard on that.
Yeah, fantastic. Anything else from
And
staff?
the Alvarado San Benito stairway with the incorporation of public art or it's not inside the contract to do the public art, but we had to modify the contract to allow to put in the public art, and that is getting ready to go out to bid too. So that both of these should be built late spring, early summer.
Great
Oh, and
news.
one more, I'm just kind of relating to the speeding issue. On Glen Parkway, we're going to be installing a speed radar sign, similar, or it's the exact same model actually as the one on Bayshore. It's going to be located at the pump station, so that'll be Glen Park and Lake Street, and in the downhill direction. And essentially, we got a lot of feedback from the public on that. And then obviously there's the elementary schools right there, so it felt like an important location. So yeah, there'll be a speed radar sign there. It's already been ordered and paid for. It's about 3 weeks away, and then we just need to get someone to install it.
And is it a permanent sign, I guess, or is it a?
Yeah, it's a permanent one. It's
Awesome.
yeah, exactly like the ones on Bayshore.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Very
good
great.
news.
Yeah, that one helps. Hopefully, it says thank you for not speeding. That's nice to see.
Yeah, it's a polite one too.
Yeah.
I like that
Yeah.
sign.
Wonderful. Anything else from staff?
No.
Anything from the committee today? Committee member matters?
I have
Anything else? It's been a robust discussion today, so I think that was very much appreciated so far. I guess with that, then, our next meeting will be March 5th, in 1 month from today. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for joining. Thank you to the public again. Thank you.
Thank you.